Before we move into questions of our panelists, I note that Dr. Roberto Lenton is with us this morning. Roberto, if you would stand, and please let's give Roberto a round of applause. We greatly appreciate the form and function and leadership you brought to the Daugherty Water for Food Institute as founding director, and we're delighted to have you with us this morning, so thank you. Well, now it's time to put these four gentlemen on the hot seat. So I'm going to do that. Bob, I'm going to start with you. You're pretty tough, okay? All right. So Bob, again, is the director of the National Strategic Research Institute. Can you tell us a little bit about how the Institute began and the ways in which you collaborate to achieve your Institute's mission?
Susan, I'm going to stand up if I can because I can't see the folks over here.
Sure, come over here.
I can swap spots with you. First of all, I want to thank everybody for being here this morning. I want to thank Susan and Matt for pulling this together and giving us an opportunity to talk about our institutes and the like, and I'm privileged to share the stage with these gentlemen and all the hard work that they've conducted over the terms of their institutes. First of all, I do want to acknowledge the staff from NSRI that are here this morning, and I'd like them to stand because they really bear the backbone of our work and keep all of us on track. So if you all would please stand. These are the folks, and Bill's coming in the room, so he's part of this group. These are the folks that work for me and do a lot of hard work. So quickly, and I'll get the hook here in a minute if I don't move on. You give a mic to a retired three-star, they tend to abuse the privilege, so I'll try not to do that. First of all, the NSRI, and we talk in acronyms, NSRI is the National Strategic Research Institute, was formed in 2012 as a result of the university wanting to get involved more directly into the Department of Defense research portfolio. Not that you hadn't done research for the Department of Defense in the past, but because we had a command, a local command, STRATCOM, that had a mission responsibility for countering weapons of mass destruction that was a particular interest to them and certainly one that they needed a research element to tackle. The University of Nebraska was selected out of 6 other universities from around the country to be the University Affiliated Research Center, a UARC, for U.S. Strategic Command. Our focus has been largely on combating weapons of mass destruction in the chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear portfolios, and really looking at 5 core competencies: nuclear detection and forensics, chemical and biological detection and forensics, passive medical defense, consequence management, and space, cyber, and telecom law. Now, I just said a whole lot that may not mean much to many of you, but when you're dealing with the Department of Defense, that means a lot to the solutions that they're trying to bring to bear across the globe when you're dealing with organizations that have no boundaries like ISIS and those that do have boundaries but use these kinds of weapon systems, if you will, to deliver effects. We are sponsored, like I said, by U.S. STRATCOM. The UARCs are approved by Congress and directed by the Department of Defense. So we have a very direct charter to the DoD at the Office of the Secretary of Defense level down through STRATCOM. By virtue of the fact that the UARC relies heavily upon the faculty and researchers within the university system across the board, we do take advantage of the students, both undergraduates, graduates, and postdocs in the various colleges. And so a collaborative environment exists across each one of the campuses and each one of the colleges in many respects to tackle a broad set of mission responsibilities that are captured within this UARC. We have been very successful over the past 4 years. Our report card is measured by essentially a minimal amount of revenue that you can generate and still remain a legitimate institution or research center. and that being $6 million for a year. Since 2012, we have exceeded that. This year alone, we neared $19 million in just this year. And over the culmination of the 4 years, we are at 44.5 or almost $45 million in research revenue that's been generated and conducted on behalf of the university across the various institutes at UNL, UNO, UNMC, and we haven't used much of Kearney because of, one, distance, and certainly they're not specific to research and the like, but they are part of that community as well. So finally, I would just like to say that the university is well ingrained into this responsibility of working with the Department of Defense. It's a very unique mission, and it's one that I think the University of Nebraska and the state can be very proud of as a result of the engagement we've had across the many responsibilities of this mission responsibility. So thank you very much, and I look forward to any questions you might have.
Well, Bob, thank you for your comments. Peter, well, I said you're fairly new as the executive director at the Daugherty Water for Food Institute. You spent your career working on the issues of water and food security in the United States and several other countries. What do you see as the Institute's unique strengths in this area? Sure.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, everybody. I will respond to the question, maybe just also as again, thank you all for showing up so early in the morning. It's fantastic to see such a great turnout and interest in the institutes. Perhaps maybe I should follow Bob's lead and also ask the team in the Water for Food Institute to stand up and just, again, these are the people that there was a team that was assembled by Roberto and colleagues. There's many others who have actually helped the Institute, but this is the core team. I would also, what's really, one of the things that I think is the unique, or one of the functional parts, the unique part of this Institute is the engagement with the faculty, as all of these institutes are working with different members of faculty. But there are a few members of our affiliated faculty here. Can our faculty fellows, the Water for Food Institute faculty fellows, can the few who are in the room please stand up as well? Christine and a number of others who are already closely aligned to the Institute. I've been on board for about 5 weeks now, but I've learned a lot about how the Institute works, what has actually been built already. And part of it is there's a small core team, but there's this much broader team with faculty fellows, support across the university system that really has taken the Institute a long way. I think the comparative advantage, to get back to Susan's question, the Institute, I think it's very much, we're in Nebraska, the long history here of the research in agriculture and in water, the experience in the state with the Ogallala Aquifer, the groundwater, how we manage groundwater sustainably. It's both a fantastic example of how to do this well, but also the emerging challenges as we understand better our environment, what actually some of the emerging challenges are. We also have a lot of experience in the state in managing surface water with the Platte River system and other parts of the system. I think this is really the huge comparative advantage of the Institute being positioned here and working across the 4 campuses with the faculty that some of who are here already today. I think with the Institute, like all the institutes, we all are somewhat different, but certainly there's a Nebraska element, there's an element of how we engage nationally around these issues, both in terms of the immediate region, the neighboring states, but also at the Washington level, how we can take this knowledge, this comparative advantage, and use this to help guide policy and decision making at national level. And I think one of the areas where the Institute has done notably well, I was at the original conference in 2009 here when the Institute was just getting off its feet. I met a number of the people who are in this room at that time. What has really happened there is the Institute has really made quite strong inroads into the international arena and established itself internationally. And I think, again, part of the comparative advantage or the opportunity with the Institute is this support from the leadership of the university, with this really seeing these institutes as being core to the university system, but providing the support for that. In my previous role, I would meet people, not just from the Institute, with Roberto and others. I would meet them in Sri Lanka, in Stockholm, in parts of Africa and the Middle East. But I'd meet the very senior staff from the university, both the UNL, but also the University of Nebraska, really supporting the Institute. So I think this has really been, to me, has been an important, it's one of the reasons I see this as an exciting and important institute, is because of this support from the university widely in the university. I mean, just maybe as part of the history of those who are not familiar with the Institute, it's the Daugherty Water for Food Global Institute, very much the global engagement. The Daugherty Foundation is one of the reasons we've been able to establish this institute and the progress so well. It's a generous gift to establish the institute and move these ideas forward. It's one thing that come out in the short clip, but I do want to emphasize that at this point that agriculture has done remarkable things in the last 30, 40 years in terms of feeding the population and meeting the challenges of the last 30, 40 decades. 3 or 4 decades. However, as in doing that, we are now running into limitations around our natural resources management. That complexity, it plays out in different ways. I've already mentioned the Ogallala Aquifer, but other parts of the world, other regions. As we now need to, as the evolving demand for food, the different requirements for food, it's the growing population, but it's also the growing economies, and as we are urbanizing, the demand for higher value foods that tend to be more water intensive. So dairy products, animal products, even in countries where they're generally they don't eat meat, like India, you've got huge demand for dairy products that's continuing to grow and placing stresses on the water systems and the land systems. These are areas that we need to address going forward, realizing that we're actually running out of scarce resources. And I think the Institute is well positioned to work on those solutions, to address those complexities, and come up with practical solutions with the faculty here, with the knowledge we have, and the broader partnerships we've established, both at the Institute, but also through our network of faculty fellows. I think just finally, I think one of the things around how we function and how we work, and I see this from the perspective of Nebraska, from the US, Europe, or Africa and Asia, is that we are working through the ultimate managers, the farm families at these scales here in Nebraska and elsewhere, to provide the food around the world, but not to stress the water resources any more than we already have. Thank you.
Well, even though Peter's only been here 5 weeks, you can hardly tell it. I had the opportunity on his 3-week anniversary to participate in some visits on the Hill and some agency visits, as well as some visits with staffers. And he's up to speed, so welcome. Thanks so much. And now Sam. Sam, it's your turn. Could you please tell us about the goals of the Buffett Early Childhood Institute?
Thank you, Susan. It's my pleasure. I'm really glad Peter's here, although he has deprived me of being the new guy. So I'm 3.5 years here, and I don't take any Nebraska jokes or anything else like that from visitors from Chicago or New York or anything else like that anymore. And I'm really glad to be here. You know, it's very interesting. You just take a moment to look down this row, and you have WMDs, you have water, you have rural Nebraska, and you have little kids. What's in common? What's in common is passion, knowledge, research, experience, and practical time in the field, as it were. All of this combined with an openness of this state of Nebraska, and particularly with the University of Nebraska. I can't imagine a better place for the four of us to work than right here, and I'm sure my colleagues too are very, very grateful for that. I'd like to take a moment and also have that opportunity to ask my colleagues from the Buffett Institute to rise and just be recognized for a bit. Thank you. We always stand together, almost, and I'm very glad that they're all here. I was employee number 1, and now we're close to 30 in these 3.5 years, and with 20 more people who are in the field working for us with public agencies. I'll get to your question, Susan, but I'll just say, first of all, there are basically 5 assumptions that guide what we do. First of all, like the rest of us, we are for campus. We're not identified with a single campus, though our administrative home is at UNO. We also have space at UNL on city campus, but we work across all 4 campuses. A second parameter is a focus on children in greatest need. We're dedicated to promoting the development and learning about the development and learning of all children, but especially those who are vulnerable as a consequence of living in conditions of poverty, abuse, and or developmental learning or behavioral challenge or familial challenge. A third parameter is our focus is across the first 8 years of life, from birth to the end of 3rd grade. We believe that what you can do for kids early in their life, whether that's at the pre-K year, the 4-year-old year, or the 3 and 4, or the birth to 5, all of that's important, but even more important is to see a persistence of effort, which we believe the research will show will result in a persistence of effect. A fourth parameter, urban and rural, just like this state. We came here to work across the state, to work beyond the state, and to work beyond even the nation. Finally, we are all about applied research. Our method is to apply the knowledge from basic research to programs, policies, and actions that foster the development of all children. I like to say that our vision is that Nebraska will be the best place in the nation to be a baby. And as that becomes more and more the case, more and more true, the more and more we will see that this is the best place for younger and older and older children, for their families, and for those who work with those children. We are dedicated to 2 critically important and closely connected initiatives. We call them our signature programs. The first is the Achievement Gap Challenge, where our goal is to create a comprehensive initiative to eliminate or reduce income-based and race-based social, cognitive, and achievement gaps among young children at risk. And the second signature program is the Early Childhood Workforce Initiative, where what we are focusing on is improving the quality, the quantity, and the skills and the diversity of those working with young children who are being raised at risk. We've begun both of those programs in a very, very large way. With the Achievement Gap Challenge, we're now working in the Omaha metro area with more than 3,500 children from birth through age 8 in home visiting, intensive pre-K, and kindergarten through, aligned kindergarten through 3rd grade, nearly 500 teachers in more than a dozen schools with high concentrations of poverty. And our workforce has just this week launched a statewide commission that should last for several years as we focus on the preparation, the certification, the regulation, and the environment and the working conditions of those across those first 8 years of life to try to improve the lives of young children. So our mission is to transform the lives of young children by improving their learning and development, learning everything we can from the evaluation and the research that we're doing. We accomplish this by working with you, by making use of the interdisciplinary resources and research of the 4 University of Nebraska campuses and collaborations with schools and colleges all throughout our system and throughout the state and nationally. I know we'll have other opportunities to talk about engagement, and I look forward to that too. Thank you.
Sam, thank you for sharing your insights. Chuck, it's now you. We welcome your input on the role of the Rural Futures Institute at the university and in the state of Nebraska.
Thank you. Susan, thank you. Be a global leader in exploring and impacting all things rural. That's a challenge that is placed before us at the Rural Futures Institute, not by a consulting firm doing focus groups with several hundred people in various settings. It's a challenge that came to us in conversations with business leaders, with mayors, with decision makers in rural communities, with scholars, with leaders in nonprofit organizations that have dedicated themselves to the strengthening of rural communities, and saying somebody better do this if we're going to continue as a species on the planet. It is a blessing every day, I just will tell you, to work with my colleagues that are here at this table who are not only really smart guys, but they're my friends. And so as we think together about the threat of weapons of mass destruction, when we think about feeding the world with less water, same amount of land, when we think about creating healthy environments for our children, we believe together that strong rural communities, not only in Nebraska, but across the country and around the world, are a critical element in that. Well, exploring and impacting all things rural, oh my God, that's too much, that's too big. Well, it is, unless you kind of bring a team of warriors around that believe that we should do that. And I'm going to ask my colleagues from the Rural Futures Institute to stand, both our full-time staff and the faculty colleagues that we have from across the institution. I just will tell you that I would invade Guatemala with a knife in my teeth with this team if that's what it takes to get the job done. They're really good. Well, so how do we do that? How do we pursue that kind of challenge? We do that, my closest colleague, Connie Reimers-Hild, likes to say we're the Google of rural. We connect the dots around questions and issues and challenges that are faced by rural communities. We connect the dots by connecting with faculty across, we say the 4 campuses, we say 5, as we include a strong association with the Nebraska College of Technical Agriculture at Curtis, connecting with faculty in those positions. We connect with nonprofit leaders in organizations across the country. We connect with folks from government agencies, state, local, federal. We connect with private companies. We're associated with about 10 private firms right now. And most importantly, we connect those resources with people in communities that are out there trying to make a difference and create strong rural communities in our world today. One of our principal tools for doing that is our competitive awards program. We're in our 4th year of that program that allows us to generate projects in both research and teaching with strong engagement components that address a very broad array of issues that confront rural communities today. We are involved today in everything from leadership development, civic engagement, business transition, business development, entrepreneurship, broadband, healthcare, K-12 education, the criminal justice system, you name it. We are involved in a very broad array of issues through that competitive awards program, and I know that a number of you in the room have been involved in those programs one way or the other. We are engaged with all campuses at this point, as well as, quite honestly, over 20 colleges and universities, including the University of Nebraska, across several states. So just a couple of examples that have grown out of the competitive awards program that grow into ongoing efforts. Our Rural Serviceship program, where we've had the opportunity to engage undergraduate students in teams of 2. We call it the NOAA project, where we will hear from a rural community that here's a problem we're trying to solve, here's an opportunity we're trying to pursue. So we use students to go out and work with a community to solve those problems. A project that we've had going on with the University of Nebraska Medical Center, Dr. Howard Liu, in addressing the shortage of mental health care workers in rural communities, now involves 800 colleagues in all 50 states helping to address that issue. So I want to tell you that in the spring we will be once again asking for your proposals from faculty members. Kim Peterson, Kim, if you'll wave your hand. Kim is the director of our competitive awards program, and you'll want to touch base with her about that project. A couple of other things that we have going on. We are going to be adding, with the support of Central Administration as well as the Institute of Ag and Natural Resources, 2 faculty positions, one in entrepreneurship and innovation in rural communities, the other in rural leadership and engagement. We are in the search right now for those positions, adding to our capacity, so just know that. We're going to be announcing as well, Sean Caskey, raise your hand. Sean is a faculty member at the University of Nebraska-Kearney, who is now the coordinator of our RFI Fellows program. We're going to be announcing our inaugural class this fall. We're excited about that. We're excited about Sean's leadership in that area, where we'll have fellows not only from faculty, emeriti faculty, and student ranks, but also community fellows that will be joining us from those leadership roles directly in communities. So, let me just say as well that we do work with a number of students, so if you as faculty members have bright young people that would like to have a career researching and impacting all things rural, please get in touch with us because we'd like to talk to them. Susan, thank you.
Well, I hope you have come to appreciate the title of this gathering this morning, NUconnections. You've heard that theme across all 4 of our executive directors. These institutes couldn't enjoy the success they're enjoying without connecting with the talent, not only on our university campuses, but also connecting with the talent in our state and across the country. What I would like to do is I would like to ask just a few more questions and then be ready for a Q&A. So if you've got some questions rolling around, be prepared to formulate those and share them. Sam, I'd like to go back to you. Why are the institutes an important part of the university's overall mission?
Well, I think we've all shown that just by the importance of the direction each institute takes. No doubt there could have been other things, but these are the things that were selected. No doubt there will be other things in the future. But right now, this is a way of highlighting strengths of the university, strengths of the state, and important needs for the nation, for the world. I believe that, again, as Susan just said about connections, that the more connections we have, the more that we can each reach out to all of you and to others who aren't here today, the more important our tasks will become, the more important our solutions to these problems will be.
Thank you very much, Sam. I would also add, if I might take the liberty, to say we often hear the phrase value add. Faculty connections with these institutes are not only value adds across the university and the university's impact, they're also value adds back in the departments because of the opportunity for the scholarship footprint, the engagement, the collegiality, so the wonderful opportunities. I would like to ask Chuck, can you talk about how the University of Nebraska faculty across all of our 4 campuses contribute to the institutes?
Susan, this has really been part of the fun of creating the Rural Futures Institute, is connecting the dots with faculty members that wouldn't necessarily typically cross each other's paths and connect. One of our best examples, and we have these things going on, again, across our campuses. One of the best examples is a project we have going on titled Catalyzing the Role of Micropolitan America in Rural America. This is a project where we have connected Eric Thompson with the Bureau of Business Research at UNL's College of Business Administration, with Jerry Daugherty and Bob Blair at the University of Nebraska, Omaha, also working with Randy Cantrell on our team, as well as being connected with the Rural Policy Research Institute as a nonprofit outside the university. This is groundbreaking work that's never been done before, looking at trade centers, for example, Hastings, Kearney, Norfolk, Columbus, communities like that, that have such an impact on a large rural area. We're now seeing that there's good, solid research evidence that they do have an influence, and it's now growing into, we're going to be several ongoing projects looking at even smaller trade centers that we believe will have some lessons not only for Nebraska, but for people around the world in rural regions. So connecting all those dots makes it happen.
Thank you. Peter, I'd like to turn to you. Could you tell us how the institutes impact locally, regionally, and internationally, please?
Well, that's a challenge. Is this on?
Nope.
I think how it impacts, I think in many ways this is coming back to also to this concept of the living laboratory, or the idea of Nebraska, how the understanding of how we create impact here and how that translates internationally and internationally. And I think perhaps the challenge we have in terms of the impact, it is the different disciplines that we must work together in the context here in Nebraska. We have things like a strong extension system. We have the various institutions and local organizations that there may be some weaknesses, but certainly you have these ways of actually translating the findings of the research of the various groups that come together to develop viable solutions for these contexts. That's in place. I think when it then comes to, particularly nationally, but then also internationally, many of these institutions don't exist or exist in a different form. So translating through those institutions, understanding things like the political economy in that environment and how people make decisions and what some of the constraints they're working under, those mechanisms, how we actually work through that particular context is again part of the interdisciplinarity, the different researchers we can draw on here in the university and our other partners to ensure that the solutions we are developing or the solutions we have here in Nebraska can be adjusted, can be analyzed, and perhaps some of them rejected for a particular situation. So it's translating all this into the context we're working in and the times we're working in. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. And Bob, now I'd like to ask you a question. Could you please help us understand the benefits to faculty in working with an institute?
I'm going to stand up so I'm not disrespectful of the folks over here. Certainly, the difference in the way we deal with faculty in a DoD research program is that most of our contracts are mostly contracts, not grants. I know the university system and faculty are used to dealing with grant funding. We can obviously utilize grant funding. However, we deal with the individual researchers in looking at how do we satisfy the various solutions to meet the requirements of our sponsors. Although we're directly responsible to Stratcom, we have a broader audience of sponsoring agencies that we deal with. We typically will work with a faculty member and their colleagues and create a conversation between the faculty member and the sponsor so that there's a clear understanding of the requirements and the like. And then we go through the university-sponsored programs offices to make sure that the faculty member and the institute are aware of all the things that are going on, and that there's a clear understanding of the contractual agreements that we're getting involved in to meet those requirements across the board. So,
Super. Thank you very much, Bob.